Welcome to another training video from Pentecostal Publishing House. I'm so excited today to have with us Seneatha Clayton. Welcome, Seneatha.
Thank you.
Well, we are excited today to talk about an important subject. Seneatha is director of AYC, and so she's going to share some important information about that. And that's really our first question. Okay. What is AYC?
It's a great question. Well, first, thanks for the opportunity to share this. Missions and young people, even children all the way up, are just like my passion in my heart. So I'm excited to share these tips and tools and things that God's deposited over the years. First, AYC is a division or a ministry of UPCI Youth Ministries that pairs mission-minded young people with sites in North America and globally that need and desire evangelism assistance. So if you're a young person, or even if you know any young people that want to be involved, the trips are like 7 to 11 days, and they go over and they kind of are just involved in missions, whatever that looks like for the country and or city that they're involved in. You know, whatever the missionary needs, they're there to be a support. They're involved in evangelism, a serve project that's like a community project, maybe working with the homeless or picking up beaches or whatever that looks like, as well as being involved in services. They'll actually get to do full services, you know, be involved in preaching, teaching, music, all of that. But big picture is that we want young people to be involved in missions and get good exposure, because we found out that exposure breeds burden.
Absolutely. That sounds so exciting, and that's what we're all about. So I got to ask then, what's your favorite part about AYC?
Oh, that's a great question. So my favorite part about AYC is, I think, the light bulb moment, whenever a young person just really gets it. So a lot of times whenever a student goes over on AYC, you might even have a young person in your church that has been on AYC and you know this, but they'll go over and they're kind of like a little reserved. They're like, you know, maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe, God's given me these skills, but I just don't know how to apply them. I don't know if they're really enough. So they go over on AYC, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm pushed outside my comfort zone. I'm able to really see, okay, I'm going to step out on this ledge. There might not be any footing there right now, but I know that this is the end of what I have. God, here are my skills. I'm going to give them to you. And then he just carries you the rest of the way. So it's this light bulb moment that students have, that they're like, wow, all I have to do is turn over my skills, things that God's deposited in me, or my passions, or whatever it is, and then God multiplies it for his kingdom and for his good. So like, for example, a student might be like, you know what, I really feel like God's given me something to share, or that he's asked me to pray for somebody, and I'm like, but I just don't know if I can. So they go and they speak, and then people are like, that's exactly what I needed. And they're like, oh, wow, I just gave it and God multiplied it, and it's for his good. You know, that's all I needed to do, was just to trust that God's going to take care of it. So the light bulb moment is probably my favorite thing about AYC, among other things, but that's my top.
Sure. You know, we've got a lot of volunteers and leaders that work with children. And when I hear you say that, I think about a lot of times our children growing up in the same church environment. Everybody knows them. There's sometimes a bit of a pressure. You're a little uncertain maybe to kind of step out with all these people who've watched you grow up. But in that environment, that open door, wow, I can just imagine some incredible testimonies.
It's like a clean slate for them. They're like, you know what, God's asked me to be this person, and so I don't have all that pressure, that I can just step out and be who he's called me to be.
Absolutely. And then the blessing it's going to be for the community that's being ministered to in that moment. And so I guess then I'm kind of synthesizing somewhat what you said then, but when you think about why AYC, it's a little bit of all that.
Exactly. So a lot of people ask, like, why should I be involved in AYC? I can be involved in missions at my local community church. Absolutely. We say, like, that's the first step in doing that. But why AYC? Because I think as a young person, you want to be involved in missions just to get the exposure, because exposure does breed burden, and it kind of opens your eyes to like how God views the world, and being exposed to different cultures just, I think, makes you a better person, just to be honest. You know, you're kind of like, okay, this is how they think, this is how things go, and I want a better understanding of that, you know? And I think another reason why for AYC is that if you can go, this is what I've seen on a lot of trips, is that students or young people will go. And just so you know, at the age of 15, students can go on AYC trips. So if they turn 15 in that year, so even a 14-year-old could go on a North American trip. So I mean, we're talking younger, right? But if they can go, remove all the distractions of the pressure, media, whatever that is, and just really hone in on what God's asked them for that week, that they are able to like hear the call of God. And what I've found, that if you can really hear the call of God now at a young age, you can develop your life around the call of God, instead of later, whenever you're 30 and 40, you're like, you know what, God did tell me this, but now I have to remodel my life. So I feel like AYC gives you an opportunity to, for one, to see how God uses your skills and talents, two, for you to be able to hear the voice of God a little bit clearer, to remodel your life, and the great exposure that it makes you just a well-rounded person and even a well-rounded saint. Because let's say that God's asked you just to stay home and be a faithful saint, you know? Well, I want to be involved in missions. I want to support missions. I just want to be, if somebody from that culture or something comes into the church, then I can befriend them. I'm not scared of that. Like, I've been exposed to that.
That's so good. We've talked in these videos about if we think we're going to wait until a student turns 14, turns 18, 19, whatever these little magic numbers are, and think we're going to flip a switch and now all of a sudden, okay, now they're ready to sing in the choir. That doesn't happen because we hit some magic age. That's a result of teachers who are watching these videos and thinking, how can I intentionally create a culture that supports finding your purpose, your ministry, and growing in that. And I wanted to be sure Seneatha came and spoke to us about, from a missions aspect, what we could be doing. I think AYC is such an important step in all of our students in their path. So I think this is really great. Maybe speak to that a little more. We've got a lot of teachers out there, we've got pastors, youth leaders, just a variety of people that are watching these videos and saying, what can I do to help my students? I love this idea of getting them connected. What could we do? What would you advise those teachers and leaders?
Absolutely. So I think it's kind of multifaceted, more like there's a lot of things that you can do. So I'll just speak to a few, because I just don't think that this is the end all list. But I think to create a mission cultured youth group or children's ministry or whatever that is that you have to expose students to different cultures. You have to be multicultural. And it's the cool thing is that the world has come to North America. Isn't that incredible? I remember whenever I was younger, I grew up in a really small town. I didn't have access to all these cultures. But now, if you're in a metro area, or even a city area, you have access to all these cultures. And so being able to expose your young people to that, just maybe kind of educate them on what this is, or like from this culture, or they kind of do it this way, or this is the type of food, or this is the type of worship that they do, or this is the history of that culture. But it kind of really exposes students and makes them think outside of the box about how the world operates out there, kind of gives them an idea of what missions could look like once they get older, and just exposes them to that culture. Another thing is that like you made a great comment that whenever you flip the switch at age 18, they're just going to be involved. And that's not the case. Get them started now. Teach them how to serve now. Reach their community now. Have them go out and do a block party, or just go. I know that COVID restrictions now are a little unique and each community is going to be different, but figure out a way that they can serve people now, because that's what missions is at the heart, is just being a servant. And another thing that my pastor taught me when we were younger, and I think it's so important that young people understand, is that missions is never going to be convenient. Evangelism is never going to be convenient. So sometimes it's going to require sacrifice. They might not be able to buy the coolest new pair of shoes, but I'm going to give this money to a global missionary. Or I might not be able to go hang out with my friends on Friday night because we're going to do a prayer walk in our community. Whatever that is, and sometimes we have to make those choices as adults. And I feel like if you allow your students and young people and your children to kind of make those decisions now, they'll get to value the opportunity to be involved in God's kingdom. So whenever God does call them when they're older, they're like, oh, it's a no-brainer, I'm going to do this, because it's not convenient, but I know it's worth it.
That's so true. We've talked, and in my book, I talk about shaping affections in our students, shaping their hearts. Our values and our priorities are not foremost shaped by we gave people a list of beliefs. It's a heart issue. And so I love what you're saying. These investments just speak volumes in the priorities we set. And I'm going to kind of hang on to that phrase that exposure breeds burden. That's so true, and that can apply a lot of things. But missions is so important, and we want that to be at the forefront. So I guess let me ask one more question. We've talked about how our teachers and leaders can create this culture. What about if we have any teachers or leaders out there that have some students, and as you've been talking, they've been thinking of a student and saying, wow, I really think this is a good next step for them. What could they do to connect and figure out how to get young people involved in AYC?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So a lot of people will say, how can I get involved now? And before they go on an AYC trip, I would say that there's some prep that can be done. And so first they need to pray that God give them the destination or wherever they need to be involved, that God just prepares their mind and heart for the adventure that they're about to set on. Also start saving. They can start putting money into an account to save for an AYC trip or a mission-funded trip, in the future, as well as just support global missionaries and North American missionaries, because wherever you are, you're going to go, you're going to be a part of that, and you just want to have your heart already there by giving of your finances. Another thing, we already talked about serving, just serve anywhere. But if they're all kind of like, you have a student or you have a young person that's already doing those things and you know that they're ready to go, is that they can go on apostolicyouthcorps.com and kind of read up of what the requirements are. AYC caters to ages 15 to 35, so it's a big group, and there's a lot of information on there, how to get started, how to apply, how to talk to your pastor, how do you talk to your parents about it, what do I need to get ready and get set up. But it kind of, and we have promo videos, and if you click on destinations, you'll be able to read about the destinations just to kind of understand what you're getting into. But hopefully the website is the one-stop shop, and as well as you can DM us on social media if you have any additional questions that the website doesn't answer.
Excellent. Well, we have in the curriculum provided from Pentecostal Publishing House, we always have activities that involve helping our students pray for various areas of global missions. We have ideas about offerings for global missions. This is a natural next step, and I want to say thank you for your time to help us understand what we can do to plug our students in. Let's prayerfully think about these ways that we can create this missions-minded culture among the groups that we lead, and we're going to believe God's going to help us as we do that. So thanks for your input today. We are appreciative.
Absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity.
All right. Stay tuned for more training videos from Pentecostal Publishing House.